Well, good morning, everybody. At least it's early morning here in the, northern latitude, about 69, almost 70. But just before the Arctic winter, well, can I call it the winter? Just before the blast, we're having some lovely still days. In other words, just imagine having your Indian summer in early September instead of having it in early November. That's what's going on here. I apologize for being missing in action last week. I had some issues that would not make it possible for me to give the webinar, or at least give the webinar in a state of consciousness. Maybe it would be better if it was in a state of unconsciousness. But I'm back, and I'll try to always notify you within a day or so. I know it's not very much notice, but I don't have the option of knowing for sure whether this 1 week rhythm will be possible for us to continue. I hope it will be, but there are some moves and travels which may not make it possible. Now, today we're going to get into the psychological origins of the universe, or of every one of an infinitude of universes. I admit the terminology is my own, and perhaps fools rush in where angels fear to tread, but I've always thought it is important to think about how it is that the ray of the Absolute flashes forth from the eternal parent, wrapped in her ever invisible robes. I know all of that is impenetrable in a certain sense, and everything that goes on in the, well, is absolutely impenetrable, but it doesn't hurt, I think, to think about what may be happening in that realm, can't even call it a realm, where nothing is happening and everything is happening simultaneously. We immediately get into the realm of paradox, which is going to take our mind as far as it can go and help it blend with the intuition. And of course, all that's available to us is the first stages of the intuition. When we talk about intuition being buddhi, let's see where we are here. Maybe I can find something. Yeah. The Buddhic plane, we have to remember, is an aspect of the cosmic physical plane. And intuition, in terms of apprehending cosmic truth, continues to deepen and be magnified on the cosmic and supercosmic planes. So, if we look here over here, here's something we call the cosmic Buddhic plane, on which some kind of reflection of the 7 rishis of the Great Bear can be found, but that in itself is probably, in a way, only the second order of intuition. Then maybe it continues for 10 orders altogether. We have this sense that our universe is composed of 10 different levels, but we don't simply mean the 10 levels of our ordinary planes. We mean the cosmic, we mean the cosmic physical plane, then the 7 cosmic planes, and the super cosmic planes, and the super, and so on we go until we get the so-called 10 dimensions of cosmos, which is all my way of saying that when we think we have apprehended the truth, we have to realize that the truth for us, at least in my view, I always have to qualify it that way, cannot possibly be the truth as apprehended by a planetary or solar logos or a galactic logos, and it certainly cannot be the truth as apprehended by the ultimate existence in universe, which we call, or I'm calling anyway, the universal logos. So we have to walk with great humility here as we attempt to enter a subject which no human intellect can really fathom. And you know, I wonder whether any being can. Okay, I just want to make sure I can be heard. I hope, because I hear a few pops going on there. And hello, hello. Yep, I seem to be audible. Okay. Well, the question arises whether any being in cosmos can apprehend the truth of that which lies beyond the veil, which separates, in a way, of course there's no separation, but which separates, in a way, any universe from the absolute. Now, last time when we got together, we talked about some of the names for the nameless, some of the names for the absolute, and maybe one can review them. As I say in my book, Infinitization of Selfhood, I think I had something like 241 names. I just stopped after a while. 241 names for the nameless. So it's certainly an exercise in hubris, but each trying to look at the question of the boundless unknown from a different perspective. And hopefully, depending on the type of mind that we have, it will open doors to look at those different names. So the whole purpose of all of this really is to create a situation that we call manas buddhi, or the blending of the higher state of our manas into the first stages of the real intuition, which we call buddhi, even though it is extremely small in its apprehension compared to the possible buddhi in cosmos. Okay, I think we are all on mute, more or less, and if there's any, let's just mute ourselves during this meditation, self-mute, and that would include the members of the staff, unless, of course, I suddenly disappear, and you have to notify me that that I cannot be heard. Okay, friends, so our first work is a meditation. And we'll begin the meditation somewhat in the ordinary, in the sense that we have been using it, and then I will move forward using some terminology which may be new to you, and it's certainly, every time I look at it, I think it's just new to me also. And we'll try to not only look at the names for the nameless, but how the universes arose. And when I talk about that, I'm not talking about the Big Bang or anything of that nature. The Big Bang, as we are normally conceiving it, is a very low-level phenomenon which is essentially etheric physical on the cosmic physical plane. And that means that it is introducing us or making visible matter and etheric matter. But the whole psychological universe on the cosmic physical plane is not accounted for, nor is the emergence of all of the super cosmic planes accounted for by what we normally call the Big Bang. But maybe something of that nature on each one of the cosmic planes does happen. About that we can know nothing. So let us get into a state of meditation. I mean, as I always try to say, I know that these types of meditation are not what is wisely offered by the Tibetan as he seeks to acquaint us with our worlds and how we can manifest in a discipleship manner in our worlds. And we have no excuse for fleeing the hard to win knowledge of an esoteric kind with which the Tibetan is presenting us. The necessity for deep, deep study and meditation along the lines of the Blue Books persists. At the same time, what the Tibetan hints at is a kind of fundamental substratum, the one life, the unity, the absolute non-duality. He at various points he indicates this level of apprehension, and perhaps wisely he does not go into it in any great detail, because there's so much that we as aspiring disciples have yet to learn about the immediate foreground of our life, including the astral mental planes and the soul plane and everything really that goes on the cosmic physical plane. And about that he is very remarkably specific. So we are not excused in any sense to flee the hard work it takes to master what he has presented. And remember, in another 10 years, we're going to get the beginning of the next presentation, at least according to what he says, after 2025. Nevertheless, some of us may be interested in establishing the sense of the substratum in our lives, and perhaps because of that, all the knowledge we may acquire in our intensive esoteric studies will be still more meaningful and still possible of greater apprehension. So let's have some meditation. The first thing, of course, is to realize that the ordinary world of the senses and of the sentient feelings and desires and of the contents of the lower mind, or any aspect of mind really, that these factors are not what we are. So we, all of us, try to find ourselves as the consciousness in a state of incarnation, the soul in incarnation, the viewer, the observer of certain levels of vibration. We are, in the ancient formulation, not the physical body, though we have one as an instrument, nor the bioelectric field, not that. Nor are we the feelings and emotions that may and will arise, not those. Nor are we the many thoughts and the tendency to formulate thought. We are something else behind that, all that. As we reach out to each other, we are not reaching out in body or emotion or lower mind. We are forming together a unity on the plane of higher mind, where what we call the shroud of the soul can be found. So our communion with each other, together in each other's presence, is as if from soul to soul in the one group soul, in the one soul of humanity, and really in the one, ultimately in the one consciousness that is. And even these higher states of identification will be found one day to be impermanent. And illusory. But we, for the purposes of our work right now, we take up an imaginative position in the fiery heart of the lotus. This is the central fire. It's called the jewel in the lotus, and entry at our stage of evolution has to be imaginative. But each one of us really is, in a deeper sense than we are a personality. We are an egoic lotus. It's an instrument, but we identify as that. And when we're in the sevenfold jewel, we can identify more as fire, the extension of the monad, the extension of pure being. We try to realize there's really only one central fire. we are the beingness of that fire, and we are the consciousness of that fire. And from that position in consciousness, which is fire and which is capable of resolving all things into fire, we look out into the world imaginatively, and no matter what content of consciousness arises, the many people, the many things, the everything, the anything, we try to feel the connectedness no matter what, whether we like it, don't like it, like that person, don't like that person, attracted, not attracted. We feel a deeper underlying unity. First, the unity hold some things before your imagination and feel the connectedness, the interfusing unity. And in fact, we isolate the unity as its own something. Much more important is the unity and not that which is unified. And this unity this participation in the same interconnected field, no matter what may be the dissonance, we cannot escape the unity. And if your heart is activated enough, and the heart within the head, and that 12-fold heart, which we call the egoic lotus, then maybe the unity can be isolated and all contents of consciousness can be, as it were, dissolved in this prevailing, universally extensive unity. So there's nothing other, nothing other. We are this unity we have isolated, and the all-pervadingness of this unity, which extends to the farthest stars and galaxies and into the subtle planes. We are there with this unity, and more importantly, as this unity. Try to grasp that no matter how apparently far you go or how subtle it gets, the unity is there, and we are that distinction dissolving unity. Going beyond the unity is the identity. Unity preserves the apparent distinctions in a state of cohesive harmony. The unity does that. But the identity is the synthesis, and it makes everything fundamentally, essentially the same. Thus, no matter what you see, apprehend, sense in a subtle way, there is no distinction between the one who is conscious and that of which that one is conscious. The substance is the same. So all distinction is fundamental substance, irreducible substance, substance. So all this that we see, and when I use the word see, of course, it's used in the general sense. All this that we register, become aware of, within or apparently without, is but ultimately one diversified emanation of the being of the universal logos. It's not just that we are related. We must become related in unity. That's the plan. But we are rays of the same thing. good or bad, attractive or repulsive, useless or useful, all rays, emanations, extensions of the universal logos, which itself is the absolute and is not the absolute. Everything is the absolute, and yet in the Mahamaya, which we are cyclically presented with infinitudinously over and over and over and over and over, forever, things seem to be other than they are. The Mahamaya is our great creation, and we must both break the creation and use the creation. This universal God, who is, in a sense, a ray of the Absolute, both is and is not the Absolute. It is the source of all in universe, and yet this ultimate universal God is sourced within the nameless. And this universal God, of which we are an emanation, is but the tiniest infinitesimal, the absolute infinitesimal, that something or somewhat which can be no more negligible than it is, must be compared to the absolute infinitude. Of course, they are not really two separate things, of course not, but the absolute infinitude is the source of that ray of the absolute, which becomes the infinitesimal universal logos, out of which all of us as infinitesimalities arise. How does this happen? Because the Absolute is immutable. The boundless, immutable principle. How does the universe arise? Not just the Big Bang, but really all the hyper-subjective levels of the universe. A few thoughts for us. We try to realize, as identification demands, first of all, realization. We try to realize that there really is no other being. Or as Blavatsky says, being, non-being. No other being but the absolute deity or infinitessence, the infinite essence, however we choose to name that nameless whatever. There's no other beingness. Let's realize that. Try to. None other. The one without a second. We always look for something else. What's beyond that? What's beyond that? Nothing. That's it. Try to realize, of course, if one could stay with that first attempted realization forever. But we try to realize that if anything that we denote as an impression, a thing, is ever to arise, that thing must be of the very substance, essence of the nameless, unbounded one. Nameless, unbounded one. The absolute deity has nothing other than itself out of which to become a universe. It can't reach into some other substance to create the way we do. We gather our materials and we create, but this absolute deity, that has nothing but itself out of which to become all that arises as a universe. Creation, the universe, is the very substance of the one and only, the unbounded one and only. So, in a way, the Mahamaya is the Absolute itself. And how does this happen? Well, there's no real way to answer that, because it's so far beyond the reach of the human intellect and consciousness. However, I would like to propose that the creation of any universe originates through an act, and right there we're in trouble, because can the immutable act? But okay, there's nothing the immutable cannot do. So paradox is with us. I will say that every universe arises through an act of self-perception. Through an act of self-consciousness. I will say that the beingness that forever is exactly as it is immutably needs no consciousness. But if there is to be a universe, consciousness must arise. And the only kind of consciousness there can be is self-consciousness. So, a simple formula is that every universe is self-consciousness, but not of the absolutely infinite whole. No, that is impossible. But the infinite potential, the absolute deity, whatever we want to call that which cannot be named, observes comes into relation with an ever lessening portion of its absolute infinitude. And in the process of self-observation, objectifies a selected, finitized portion of its absolute infinitude. Choosing, through an act of inherent super universal will, to, as it were, see less and less and less of that which it inherently is, until a focus, a sustained, finitized focus is achieved. And that finitized portion of absolute infinitude becomes the finite universal logos out of which all of what we apparently are has arisen. Now we will, of course, constantly review this idea. But the universe is finitized self-sight of the absolute deity. And since the content of the infinitessence, the absolute deity, is absolutely infinite, there can never be a beginning or end to these finitizations we call a universe. It's all the infinitessence, it's all the absolute deity, but in the Mahamaya, a tiny, 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 absolute infinitesimal of content is sustained through illusory time, to become what we call a universe. And from this source that we call the universal logos, a kind of division, which is no real division, but a kind of proliferation occurs. Emanation goes forth into what we call the tremendous diversity of our universe or any universe. We all come out of that point which has been become by the absolute deity in a state of self-objectification. And we are apparently different from each other, but really, all this diversity, every bit of it, nothing left out, is all essentially one, arising from the one, as I put it, the great unbounded one as the universal one as one. So, one being, non-being, becoming a universe through the act of selective self-limitation. The universe is the selective self-limitation of the absolutely infinite deity. It's a sustained self-limitation, subject to the illusion of space and time. And try somehow, these are lifetimes of contemplation. You can't do it in a few minutes. But try to realize something of your absolutely infinite essence, even though in universe your consciousness and all consciousnesses will always be drastically limited in scope. Drastically limited compared with absolute non-limitation. Infinite essence, we all are forever. Infinitessence forever. But in the Maha-Maya, reduced to infinitesimals, the apparent opposite of the absolute infinitude. And we work our way back in consciousness, fulfilling our plan at the beginning, our purpose at the beginning, fulfilling the beauty of our intended self-becoming. We work our way back into the realization of what we really are. Thus, nothing can escape the Absolute. Nothing can escape the identicality. And as a first step, nothing can escape the unity which we have isolated. We will, inevitably, little relative, circumscribed, infinitesimal we will inevitably isolate the unity, realize the identicality, in ever-intensifying levels of realization, and work our way back through the Mahapralaya into the unbounded one and only from which we self became. This X is essential I. I use that formula. Tix, yea. This X is essential I. I work with that. I work with lots of formulas. But no matter what I see, no matter what I sense, i.e. the X, the algebraic X, whatever, whenever, this X is essential I, or this X is I, however you want to do it. You practice that. Not to lose your grounding, not to lose your practicality, because you are in the illusion to perfect the illusion, which is you become creation. Yet, the ground of all being, as Paul Tillich called it, must be somehow sensed. So don't let anything escape your identicality with it. And think for a moment, before we end this rather deep reflection, what would your microcosmic, emanated, circumscribed, disciplic life be like if something of this true, unchanging nature could be apprehended with some degree of continuity? What if for you this X is I? The implications are really astonishing, but we have to stay with it and work it out so that we don't allow anything to seem other than what we are, other than ourselves, other than the absolute, become universal logos, become everything. Our purpose, of course, is service. But the service that comes out of realized selfhood, or as, Yogananda basically brought it forward, the self-realization fellowship, the service that comes forward out of self-realization is far more potent. And so, friends, let us close this reflection on the self-perception of the one and only, the self-perception become universe. Let us close this with our anchor point and the foundation of all that we must do for humanity and the planet and our local sphere, all that we must do of service, hoping that our deepening service will grow out of true self-realization, which has nothing to do with our knowing our little microcosm, which also is necessary. The great invocation. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Okay, friends, quite a trip, but you know it can become a substratum to our necessary and infinitely repeated everyday life. So we don't forget who we are or what we are, even as we work within the Mahamaya to perfect the creation we have become and which we purpose. And of course, every time you use the word we, you know, it doesn't really make sense. But in the Mahamaya, the word we does make sense because there is diversity. There are the many, or do you say there is the many? There are the many, and there is the one. And both are inescapably present simultaneously. Okay, So let's see. Are there any of us left? Are there any remaining? I suppose a few, and of course, this kind of reflection may not be for everyone. I certainly realize that. We have a lot to do in the world of relativity, and it's very necessary. This world of relativity. I kind of am a fan of the great sage Shankara. And I quoted this before. He has this book called The Crest Jewel of Discrimination. He was sort of the opposite hemisphere to the Buddha in a way. And he, I think he died, whatever you can call died, at the age of 32. And he had established many monasteries all over India by that time. And he said this interesting thing. He said, most mysterious is Maya, and forever. Every one of those statements can absolutely stop you in your tracks. Most mysterious is Maya, and forever. We're all trying to disabuse ourselves of the Maya as if we'll suddenly be completely saved and return to our pristine state, but let's remember the secret doctrine that cyclically forever we self-become into the Mahamaya without leaving, of course, our absoluteness behind, because that is forever immutable. So as I say, the paradoxes abound, and those paradoxes are beyond, I think, what we can really solve. We have to solve these things experientially. We have to get into the thou art that, this X is I, the dissolve all into... We have to experience the unity, the identicality, and then, it will go beyond trying to solve it with our mind, which will always run into the wall of paradox, and we will never be able to be free of the kinds of inherent contradictions which, when using the mind, one encounters when considering these matters. Okay, friends, well, I've certainly talked enough. I guess we can all agree on that. And if there are any comments that you would like to offer, oh my God, some of us, I have to say hello to some people that I just haven't seen in years. And of course I want to single you out, Aggie. Geez, it's great to see you here. Wow, okay. 30th anniversary of the USR coming up. I hope you can be there. But anyway, here we are, a number of us, apparent number of us, gathered. And if anybody has any thoughts you would like to offer, you're most welcome to raise your hand, and I'm happy to hear what your thought may be. Okay, there seems to be a question. Brett, can you catch Yogi Goodhart's question? If I try to do it, I somehow mess up my whole question sheet. Yeah. Or statement. Question or statement.
Yes. The statement is learn by doing.
What am I doing? Learn by doing. Oh, learn by... that's my question. What am I doing? Okay.
Yes. Well, what are you doing?
Okay. So you said learn by doing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we can hardly dispute that. Hardly dispute that. Of course, now, different things trigger. In the Mahamaya, there is much to learn, though not infinitely much. Because the cycles of universe, non-universe are limited, otherwise there would be no cycles. And we have to take the first and second fundamentals of the secret doctrine seriously. I think we have really nothing else to go on. Those are the great statements. There is a boundless, immutable principle, and all is subject to the law of periodicity. So I've often questioned whether in the infinitessence, or as the infinitessence, as that ultimately infinitely intense state of beingness, there's anything to learn at all. I suspect not. I suspect learning implies limitation, and in the Mahamaya we must, to perfect this creation we have self-become, we absolutely must learn, and we learn by doing. And even thinking is doing, and meditating is doing. Those are all aspects of doing. But ultimately, you know, we are it all, we know it all, ultimately. And the only way we will be returned to that realization is through the dissolution of the universe, the Mahapralaya, which restores us to all in allness. Well, you know, we've been through it forever, and ever and ever and ever and ever. When I was a little kid, I used to pester my mother, you know, to write numbers with me all day. I wanted to see how far I could go, how many numbers I could write, and keep going and keep going and keep going. I don't think I ever got very far as a child of 4 or 5 or whatever, but I had that sense of the infinitude of things. Of course, it would take forever to write numbers. The universe would close down, wouldn't it? But somehow, inherently and deep within us, is that which cannot be improved in the slightest manner. Now, some people really balk at that. What? You mean I can't keep improving? Well, then who are you identifying with if you think you can improve? Because to absolute infinity, nothing can be added, nothing can be subtracted, nothing can be multiplied. If it's multiplied by itself, it's simply itself. Nothing can be divided. It can't be divided. It's immutable. It cannot be divided. So ultimately, you know, I always was amused. Meyer Baba, he was a great sage, and he was silent for 30 years. I went to the place where he had been meditating. I was in California somewhere. And when he finally broke his silence after 30 years, he said, "Don't worry, be happy." Okay, well, I thought, well, but more and more, I realized why he may have said that. More and more. Okay, Yogi, go ahead. Please, you can speak. You're open.
Greetings to all. I hope this is working. Is it?
You are very clear, loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. Well, there's this deep sense of joy in being with brothers and sisters talking about these quite far out subjects. I relatively don't go beyond what the solar logos is playing around with.
On a good day.
And experimenting with. However, the law of correspondences always kicks in while these wonderful streams of seeds of the infinite are displayed so wonderfully with a good meditation to begin. The law of correspondences, the universal life coming into an introspective definition of its borders, very much like a child being born after its skin and organs have been placed with the first breath to enter this level of becoming and being and growing. So the law of correspondence is the disciple disciplining or forming lines around their behavior and thinking and managing of their energies. The fires can burn a house down, or they can purify. So how do we manage these powers that were given on these different levels? It's so awesome. I just wanted to thank you for having this program and for all these wonderful people that even silently contribute.
Thank you, Yogi. Well, when we really get realistic about it, given our tiny little scope as relative beings, at least at this point, the universe is going to last a long time. And we have so much to do step by step, and in terms of trillions of years, the solar logos is many, many, many Mahamanvantaras beyond us, when we consider the Mahamanvantara the life cycle of the solar logos. So, in terms of actual practical experienceable time, we again and yet again and yet again have this huge and really joyful journey. And we just aren't. We're just trying to master little microcosmic man here, just overcome our elemental selves, like the Buddha suggested, and conquering 1,000 armies by doing so. And but nevertheless, even though the practical progression in the Mahamaya will be and has been an amazing journey, keeping some of the irreducibilities in our mind, I don't think it can hurt. I think it will intensify the experience of the journey. So thank you for your positive thoughts on this process. Appreciate it. Thank you. Yes. Okay. Hold on. Elena. Okay. Hi. You're open. Mic open, Elena.
Hi.
Hi, Elena.
Just some thoughts here on this topic that it is said that absolute unity cannot pass to infinity, because that infinity presupposes how should I say, the limitless extension of something and the duration of that something. So if we can suppose the eternal infinite all, the omnipresent unity, instead of being in eternity, becoming through the periodic manifestation of the manifold universe, then that unity would stop to be one. I don't know if I am making sense of myself.
I think we're all trying to find the language to clothe these perceptions that really are coming from the triad, via the Antakarana. So see, every time we even offer one sentence about this, that one sentence could be pondered a very long time and open to great discussion. I will. What I have been trying to emphasize is that unity still observes the integrity of the units of illusion. It still differentiates, although it's a cohesive differentiation. And so that unity will not pass into absoluteness, because that unity has to become, in the synthesis, identicality. And that identicality can then pass the ring, pass not of the universe. It's the reabsorption of the ray of the absolute, which is the self-becoming into a universe. But for practical purposes, so many of us are walking around very, very shy of realizing even the unity in our group, the unity of humanity, the unity of our planet, and beyond. We have not yet isolated the unity. So we have a lot of practical work to do right here and now in how to live as disciples in the unity we have achieved, we have succeeded in isolating. And I'm sure we would all agree with that. As far as stepping into that next step, which I call identicality, which is the absolute, which is the synthesis, which means that no matter what you look at, no matter what it seems to be, it's essentially the same thing as everything else, and this is known internally. Now, so we have, in a relative sense, a lot of work still to do in order to live in the loving unity and then go beyond that into a synthesis of an always continuously perceived identicality. Now, what the Mahapralaya will be, God knows. What state the universal logos will be in when its finiteness is about to end again, we can only conjecture, and it's way beyond. But right here and now, the important thing about all this stuff, our minds are going to create 10,000 errors. Every one of us. We just can't, We do what we can do. But experiencing the unity, experiencing some flicker of the identicality. When I experience it, as I sometimes fleetingly do, it's a vibration in my heart. And suddenly, it doesn't make any difference what I'm looking at. I feel, I guess I have to use the word feel. I feel something which becomes everything. I call it, in the words of the poet Wordsworth, William Wordsworth, something far more deeply interfused. And I call this thing infuception. I call it infuception. Beyond perception, I call it infuception of that, and then, it's like on the way to identification, because, as the Tibetan says, the first thing you have to have for identification is realization. And realization means that something you didn't see before, you now do see. So it's a flash. It's a Uranian thing, a Neptunian thing.
Well, can I be a little bit more practical?
If you can.
Coming from the infinitude and absoluteness, to say that, when we're talking about isolated unity, we are starting to move towards isolated unity at the third initiation, where one of the major issues is the freedom of illusion, and moving to unity and commencement of the isolation of this unity in our consciousness.
Yes, I agree with that. I agree with that. And remember that the
So,
true isolated unity only begins at the third degree, right? We would both agree
yes,
with that.
that's what I said.
Yeah.
Yes,
And at the fifth
that
degree,
you
the master has achieved that isolated unity
yes,
to the fifth degree. But
and then
yeah,
yes,
would even
that
the master say that he had thus achieved? You see, this is the thing. In other words, what I don't see this as a terminal state. I see this as a state ongoing in
it's a
universe.
process.
Yes,
It's a process.
exactly,
Yes.
exactly.
And when we're talking about the rays there, we have the first ray, isolation, second ray, unity.
Yes,
Where the
exactly.
first ray lead us to the identification, and the second ray leads us to recognition of unity through, pure reason. We're going to the fourth initiation, and then we're going to the fifth. So,
Yes.
I see the Buddhi involved
Yes.
in the process. As you say, it's an ongoing process.
Yes, I agree. And let's remember that the third ray manages to include diversity in the unity. So unity, diversity, and the one, all three rays, I think, are
Yes, diversity is
involved
the third
here.
ray. Yes.
Well,
Yes.
yes, yeah, I agree with what you say. The important thing for all of us, now we can. This series of programs is meant to do two things. One, to help us conceptualize some of these things, so that it's just not nonsense to us. And when somebody says, well, it's all one and all that, we have the rational cognitive thought to justify this oneness. But more important than that will be the sustained experience of it for all of us. And, so often we all know from our experience how it's broken and the continuity is broken and we fall down and, all that stuff. But more and more, like the Buddha, he had, in my view, the sustained perception of suchness. He called it suchness. And he achieved, no matter what happened, he achieved this sustained continuity of perceived suchness. That's the most important thing that can arise out of what we're doing together. And even if we just get a flash, a glimmer, even if it's not forever, even if it lasts for 30 seconds, 15 seconds, maybe it'll last for 5 minutes, maybe it'll last for an hour sometime, or more, that's what's important. That's the real, that will qualitatively change our lives. Okay, well, we continue to think and we continue to feel. Master Morya uses the word feel in a much higher sense than the astral sense of it. It's a sensitive registration of, it's not just an astral thing. Well, thank you, Elena, for those thoughts and, making it practical by bringing it down to the level of the fourth and fifth and third initiation. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm looking if anybody has any further thought. You're most welcome to speak. Of course, we kind of realize the futility of words, and yet we use words. I gave that Ramakrishna thought, the mind is like a thorn. Use that thorn to remove the thorn and throw them both away. I really was stopped in my tracks by that one. Because it's not that the mind is the end of anything, but it is incredibly useful in detecting its own limitations. So that's what we have to learn, how to think acutely, the acute energy of divine mental perception. That is one of the names of the third ray, the acute energy of divine mental perception. And, just the way the knowledge petals of the egoic lotus start to fall away after the third degree, and we're into the number 1 and 2, as you brought out, we have to get there. And the mind with the intuition, I think, is much more useful than the intuition without the mind to explain what has been perceived. So remember, what we're trying to do here is to achieve degrees of monadic awareness. Now, we can't really do that. We're not a master, but some degree of monadic awareness, and has been suggested. It's a 1 and a 2. The monad is on the first aspect of divinity, but it's on the second plane, which means that it is the expression of a kind of heart center of the solar logos on the cosmic physical plane. I did sort of mention that before, but sometimes it doesn't hurt to mention things more than once. That if you look at this diagram, which is in cosmic fire, and which Keith Bailey has colored for our benefit here, notice that the heart centers are on the second plane. That's the ether in which your heart center is found. Okay, there it is too. And if we went up and up, I bet we'd find that the Tibetan did not fill in all the chakras up here. But remember, 35 vortices of fire make a master. 42 vortices of fire, by extension, make a Chohan. And 49 vortices of fire will make a Chohan of the 7th degree. So when we look at the second subplane of any of these planes, and then we look at where the monad is found, the monad is found on the second subplane. It's kind of a heart center. So indeed, as some of you have been saying, it does offer the first ray and the second ray, the first aspect and the second aspect. Okay. If there are any, okay, there are. And okay, Maria Rosa Valdevel. Okay, Maria, go ahead. Oops, yep, I've got you there. You can speak if you wish.
Hello, Michael.
There you go. Okay.
Sorry, it is my first intervention.
Yeah.
I really didn't want to speak, but for some reasons this hand got up.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry.
Good for you.
It is very difficult for me to explain that I feel something very deeply attracted to this, although I realize that it is, I have still a very low level. So my really question is if even when you feel this not being so prepared, if you feel that we still can do something, because I believe that there is something very deep that is attracting me to be present in this session.
Good.
Sorry.
Yes, look, we are attracted by this subject. Why? We know, look, with our little puny minds, what can we do with this subject? Not a whole lot yet. But the very essence of our nature is spirit, is being, is reality. If you peel away the onion,
Yeah.
all you have left is nothing, which is everything. And the everythingness in us calls us to try to find our way through all of the false identities we imagine. You know, I'm this, I'm that, I'm this, I'm that, and the wise Upanishads say no, not this, not that, not this, not that, until we get back to the very thing or thinglessness, whatever, that we are. It calls to us because we want reality. Now, as Elena was saying, you know, we're going to get a dose of reality at the third initiation, and beyond and beyond. It intensifies, and something in us, the spirit is awakening in us to find itself. We call that self-realization. Self-realization. And that's what we, you know, so our mind will make 10,000 mistakes. Okay. We just have to live with that. But the beingness in us will find the beingness in everything. In every person, in everything, no matter what, every content of consciousness, every perception. This X is I, you know. And that is on the road to identification. On the road to identification.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Are you from Brazil, Brazil, Maria?
No, Barcelona, Spain.
Spain. Oh, wonderful. Oh, wonderful. Okay,
Yes.
glad you were able to join us, and
Thanks.
don't worry about the language. All language is inadequate. All language.
I think working. I'm working in Barcelona with a group.
Okay.
And I was doubting whether it was appropriate or not to stay here.
Okay, well, very good. Okay, well, we will deepen.
Thank you.
All of us will deepen in these perceptions. Thank you, Maria. Thank you for joining us. Okay, Alex. Hey, Alex. Hi, Alex. Go ahead.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Can you hear me?
I can. Yes. So far. As deaf as I may be. Okay. Okay.
How am I?
How am I? I'm well. How am I? If I know what I mean, I told you about my conversation with my friend Scott. You know,
Yeah.
we never use anything but I. It's fun. Okay.
I just wanted to ask if we could have or see again point number 14, where you said the absolute deity observes, comes into relation with a lessening portion of its absolute infinitude.
Oh, God help.
I was just wondering if we could see it again, if I could, it's point number 14, or if we could
and
maybe
that's
see
not
it
even-
later somewhere.
Not even said the best way it could be said. I'm trying to say it better in my forthcoming book.
I thought that it struck me that you're summing up Shankara's treatise in your language, and I wanted to take it away and think about it.
Yeah, there it is. I'll tell you what. I'll send it to everybody. I'll send this meditation to everybody. Actually, I should do that, and I should send the previous meditations to everybody. I'll try to do that. I'll try to have Joe and Brett and Kay help me do that. Get that to you if you want to use them. But like I say, this little book that I'm working. Well, look, I carry with me a ratty little copy of the Crest Jewel of Discrimination. It is so dog-eared that it's just about falling apart, but it's only this thick, you know. And Shankara said it in a few words, and as you say, I'm trying to get it into my own language, in a language that is meaningful to me. Now, and I would propose that every one of us has to do that. See, I mean, the language of anybody else can help us on the way, but finally it's our own language that counts, or non-language. So each of us building our own Antakarana in our own way will find our own languaging for these perceptions. But here's what I want. I wanted to mention one more thing before departing this world here. Let's see. Wait a second. Oh golly. Here it is. I want to, talk about self-objectification. Okay, because the moment that consciousness arises, time arises. So in this beingness, which is really impenetrable, it's the absolute darkness and the absolute light, in this beingness, when moving from infinitessence into consciousness, and the only kind of consciousness there can be is consciousness of self, because that's all there is, There's nothing else there, so it's got to be self-consciousness. I have identified 3 different levels of departure from pure infinitessence. Like I say, pure infinitessence needs no consciousness. And that's why when Blavatsky says, "Naught remains save ceaseless eternal breath, which knows itself not," it doesn't need to know. It is so very much that it's infinitely beyond knowing, if I can put it that way. But the minute there has to be a universe, and, son of necessity, or why does there have to be a universe anyway? Well, I have theories about that. But anyway, the moment, can't help but speak in terms of time, consciousness arises, there's been an infinite collapse of absoluteness, because consciousness unitizes. And I have divided that arising of consciousness into 3 different levels, and I'll just kind of hint at it right now and go into it more deeply at another time. It was my hope to take everything very sequentially and, do first things first, but maybe my mind is not constructed that way. Well, in a way, this is first thing. The flashing forth of the ray of the Absolute is certainly first things. But I call the highest level of consciousness perception. And for me, it is the objectifying of the one ultimate infinitude. In other words, the absolute deity sees itself in absolute entirety. And so it becomes an objectified absolute infinitude, which is infinitely less than the infinitessence. And don't worry about understanding that, because I don't think I do either. But I'm working on it. So the minute consciousness arises, there is a perception, a self-perception, and that self-perception is of the Absolute, and it's infinitely less than pure beingness. But nevertheless, it's the perception of all that's possible to perceive. Then comes the stage, and there are infinitely many of these next stages, called penultiception. Ultimateness, well, let's see, how do you say it? Penultimate. There's an English word called penultimate. It means almost the ultimate. And here is the perception of all of the lesser infinitudes. However infinitely many there may be, it's not the absolute infinitude, it's all the lesser infinitudes. It's the perception of all or any infinitudes. All inherent infinitudes except the one absolute infinitude. Finally, we get down to the infinite number of finitudes, of bounded perceptions, an infinitude of finitudes, and our universe is one of those, as is every universe. Now, how it is that God or the absolute deity or whatever it is, the nameless, how it is that there is a localization and a selection, a process of self-limitation until selection occurs. How that occurs and how that absolute deity fixates upon a series of finite potentials to become a universe, well, I'm pondering it, and of course, no true answer will appear. But at least these are the three stages of perception, of self-perception within the super-universal. Now, I hope I haven't been too confusing about that. Suffice it to say, the Absolute becomes our universe. But I'm trying to look at the stage of consciousness which produces our limited universe. So I have to apologize for what I've just done and said, and I'll get back to it later, and hopefully it will make sense, increasing sense as we go along. I think we're reaching pretty much the end, folks. I keep on promising to go through the following, at least if I mention it. Let's see, wait a second. Have I lost it? Some terminology introduction. Yeah, I keep on promising to go through this, and I will. I will one fine day. Here it is. It's about the first ray technique, and in a way it seems like coming down to earth. But I don't want to start it now. It's how the first ray technique works, and how the different descent of energy through the level of Atma into the mind body, into the brain, and really from the highest level we can possibly speak of. These are practical matters. But I would suggest to you that by the simple expedient of trying to look at all things as if they were essentially yourself, that much can be accomplished. Spend 5 minutes a day or 10 minutes a day and without any expectations, with this X is I, or however you want to put it. This X is essential I am that. Just a few minutes a day, even if you're looking at a stone, or a twig, or a drop of water, whatever impresses you, use a formula similar to that, and see if a change does not begin to occur within your heart and within all the various hearts. Remember, the monad is a heart center. I tried to explain that earlier. The 12 within the vehicle, the 12 within the head, and the 12 upon the plane of soul endeavor cooperate as one. And the 3 whose number is a 12 respond to the greater 12. That's the monad. So we're all trying to learn how to respond to the monad, which we essentially are, and the monad is none other than the ray of the Absolute. Okay, friends, I think we may have reached the point beyond which nothing further should be said. I'm really happy you're all here. I just want to name you: Aggie, Alex, Anne, Anna, Annette, Bibi, Elena, Eva, Frederick, Iris, John Alexis, Kathy, Leah, Maria Rosa, Martha, Michael, Myrna, Olivia, Rebecca, Risto, Stephen, and Stephen again, Stephen Ambrosish, Stephen Renneberg, Tiu, Victoria, Yogi, and our backup group here, our staff, Sam, Brett, Kay, and I think Joe may not be with us this time, but she's often there. Very helpful. So, look, friends, let's just close by attempting to isolate the unity and sounding an Om. No matter what you see or apprehend, that unity is always present. Here, now, and always. It's the one thing, non-thing, that you cannot get rid of. It is persistent, continuous, and divorced from all relativity. So, thank you. And Brett, if you'll help me, I'm just going to unmute everybody. So, if for any reason you wish to say a cacophonous goodbye, I know how it goes, because when we try to unmute, we get all kinds of sound. But I just want to be able to do that. And so, I always like those farewells, In beginningless, endless duration, what is a farewell? What is a hello? So, Tuya and I are here north of the Arctic Circle, and we're busy being everybody. So, farewell.
Bye, Michael.
Bye, Michael.
Thank
Bye, Julie.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Nice to hear you all.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Michael.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
How am I doing? How's I today? Okay. Good night, good morning, good day. See you.